I'm sure we can agree that 2020 was the year we'd all like to forget. A global pandemic, huge challenges for our health services, our government, and over 70,000 deaths. A really terrible year. This is Roger. He lost his life in October, aged just 60. Bev also lost her life in October, aged just 56. The tragedy of these deaths, along with hundreds of others, is that they could have so easily been avoided. Bev and Roger both died of mouth cancer, and both deaths were a direct result of delayed treatment due to COVID.
So COVID-19 this year has had a massive issue on all cancer diagnosis and all cancer treatment, but more so with head and neck because of the importance of early diagnosis. We would go to a GP and we'd have a lump, we'd have a cough, we'd have one of the many symptoms that you can have for head and neck cancer. And what they would do then is they would send an immediate referral to your local hospital, and then in normal circumstances, within 2 weeks, you'd have had your biopsy and you'll be told your treatment pathway. That way they're catching an awful lot of the cancers early doors. But unfortunately with COVID, since that's happened, in the month of April when we were first in lockdown, 58.8% less 2-week referral plans coming into the NHS. That's a lot of people not being diagnosed early, and that's a problem.
This information came to light from a collaboration with Professor Mark Lawler, Scientific Director of DataCan, the UK's health data research hub for cancer.
There'll be people listening to this, Mark, that have never heard of DataCan, which is such an important organisation. Can you just tell the people listening a little bit about DataCan?
DataCan is the UK's health data research hub for cancer. It's one of 8 hubs that were set up just over a year ago across the United Kingdom. And so we've come together really to try and use data to really improve outcomes for cancer patients. We collected real-time data every week. We chose 2 parameters that we could measure on a weekly basis across the United Kingdom. These 2 parameters were the 2-week wait and chemotherapy attendance. And what we saw was extremely worrying. For 2-week waits, we saw an average drop of 71% during the first lockdown compared to the pre-COVID-19 levels. But what does this mean? It means that 7 out of 10 people were not getting referred to specialist cancer services, either because they were not attending their GP with suspicious symptoms, or because GP and or specialist cancer services were not available due to the repurposing of the health service. Similarly, for chemotherapy attendances, we saw a greater than 40% drop, meaning that 4 out of 10 cancer patients were not receiving their chemotherapy in a timely fashion.
Shocking figures. Remembering the government's message time and again,
stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives.
It's worth recapping these details. 7 out of 10 people were not getting referred to specialist cancer services. 4 out of 10 patients were not receiving their chemotherapy as they should. DataCan also modelled the impact of the pandemic across all cancers and estimated there could be between 7,165 and 17,915 excess cancer deaths due to the direct or indirect effects of COVID-19.
Working closely with the Swallows Head and Neck Cancer Support Group, we looked at COVID-19's impact as early diagnosis is so critical to good outcomes in patients with head and neck cancer. Our results are sobering. At its nadir, just under 6 out of 10 people at risk of developing head and neck cancer are either not presenting to their doctor or are not being referred to specialist cancer services with suspicious symptoms. Looking at projected 5-year survival, we saw that this number dropped by approximately 4%, potentially reversing some of the great work that has been done in this disease. Just getting back to normal isn't good enough. The current data now suggests that we may need to be operating at 130% of pre-COVID-19 levels in order to address the backlog, the missing diagnoses, and the delayed treatments for people with cancer.
Whose problem is this? It's the person that isn't being diagnosed. Because if you're not being diagnosed early, you can go from a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, suddenly to a stage 4. And once you get to stage 4, it's a different conversation with treatment pathways. And all that can happen very, very quickly. We know of 2 families. We've lost a mother and a sister and an auntie, a brother and uncle because of late diagnosis, where they didn't have all the same treatment pathways that they should have done.
Roger, a plumber from Blackpool, was a husband and brother. He first assumed the lump in his mouth was just a cyst. In February 2020, his dentist referred him for hospital x-rays just before lockdown. Chasing the scan results and in constant pain, Roger was told his case was not a priority. Eventually, after repeated visits to A&E with a growing lump, he managed to get a scan in September where they discovered an aggressive tumour. He was given 6 weeks to live. Roger died in October. Without COVID, it could easily have been a different story.
We're not blaming the NHS. This is all about making sure that we don't have these extra deaths in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year and 5 years down the line.
Obviously, thoughts and prayers go with people who've been in the position where they've lost family members. The question is, how do we get the GPs back to work as soon as we possibly can and make sure that those usual channels regarding referral to treatment are continuing to make sure that we don't lose any more people and break up any more families because of preventable diseases which haven't been diagnosed early enough because of the impact on the NHS. That's the key thing going forward. It has been disappointing the fact that some dentists, not just here in Blackpool but across the UK, haven't been seeing patients. But I think government really need to make this a priority, not just for early detection of mouth cancers, but more generally people's oral health as well. And I think if we're not careful, we'll soon be at a stage where the long-term impacts on people's health will be far worse.
Chris also spoke with Chris Byrne, who's worked with clinical teams within the NHS. More recently, he is the charity support lead with the Swallows in Worcester.
So Chris, I sent you all the data findings from DataCan and just want to hear your opinion on the sort of figures that DataCan are sharing with us.
The data that I've seen from you are frankly quite horrifying, really. We know that the survival rates for head and neck cancer are generally quite good in the UK, certainly compared to Europe. Now, if you add into that the impact of patients not actually being able to see their consultants, not seeing their GPs, not getting their treatment, not getting screened, that is going to have an impact on the 5-year survivorship rates. 30% reduction in clinical trial admissions, appalling. 76% reduction in the endoscopic investigations. Well, you know, how else do you look in there unless you've used one of those kind of endoscopes? So we're not here to point out who's to blame for things. And I think the only way to make sure that the correct sort of balance is made is if the data like this is made available for us to go back to the decision makers and say, hang on a minute here, let's do something about it. Simple as that.
So at the moment we can have real-time data because of COVID. If they stop that loophole, it means we would have to possibly wait 2 years to see whether we're improving or not.
It means that that information's hidden. And frankly, the NHS is paid for by you and me. so that information is actually our information. So I think first and foremost that we've got a right to that information.
If we don't act quickly and decisively, the progress that has taken over 10 years to achieve could potentially be lost in just 10 months. This data must be used in a transparent and responsible way to benefit the NHS, its patients and society as a whole.
I think government do need to be transparent here and work with charities to make sure you can put the support in early on to mitigate the impact of COVID longer term. It's so important.
Data to me is just numbers, and I just didn't know how I was going to get these numbers to make an impact. And then I heard the 2 stories of people dying.
Every single number that we mention is an individual citizen or an individual patient. Without this real-time intelligence, you're making me fight cancer and COVID with one hand tied behind my back. If used efficiently and effectively, data really can save lives.
My final wish from this campaign we're doing is that government and the NHS start taking this seriously. I'd also like the government to allow access to data throughout 2021 and beyond, so that the people like Mark Lawler can tell government whether they're doing good, bad or indifferent.
If you are a citizen with suspicious symptoms, a lump on your breast, difficulty in swallowing, blood in your pee or your poo, please go to your doctor. If you're a politician or a health leader, please act now and ensure that cancer services are not only preserved but are enhanced to address the challenges that we have raised. Cancer must not, under any circumstances, become the forgotten C in the fight against COVID.
Thank you.